Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to the weekly wrap-up. I'm Raymond Dahlman, president of DSA Financial Group, and today is May 7th, 2021. I hope everyone had a fantastic week. Weather was pretty pleasant here in the mountains of Colorado. Did have a little snow Monday or Tuesday, but it's been quite warm the rest of the week. Got lots of sunshine. I mean, I've even got shorts on today, which is a very pleasant thing, especially when you're wearing jeans and sweats for the last 4 or 5 months. But again, hopefully everyone has had a fantastic week. We got Mother's Day coming up on Sunday, so hopefully everyone takes good care of their moms and wives and spoils them a little bit. I actually took my wife out for an early Mother's Day lunch. Went to Perry's Steakhouse and had the pork chop for lunch. For folks in Houston, Perry's is a fantastic steakhouse that started out down in the Friendswood area, and they've got locations all over the place now. It is nice to have one close to us here in Denver. So in Denver, not too far from us. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into how the markets have been doing this week. Starting out with the Dow Jones. Let's see, this week it was up about 2.73%. And let's look at the S&P 500. That chart doesn't look as good, but it was up 1.3%. The Dow 15, the utility stocks, were down for the week about 0.79. The NASDAQ down a little bit, about 1.05%. The Dow transports are up though. That chart looks pretty good. It's up about a little more than 3.5%. So all in all, not a bad week for the indexes. Looks like technologies were down a little bit, but all in all, not terrible. Let's take a peek at gold. Gold was up, let's see, about 3.37%. Silver, it's up 6% for the week. Wow. And for your crypto fans out there, Bitcoin looks like it was up about 1.13%. So all in all, not a terrible week for the markets. I will cover some oil prices in a little bit. But let's go ahead and look at the news here on trading economics. The Dow and the S&P set some new records. To be expected. Let's see, consumer credit is growing above expectations. Wall Street gains momentum. There was some negative news here. U.S. stocks mixed on weak payroll reports. The non-farm payrolls increased by 266, well below forecasts of nearly 1 million. And the unemployment rate rose to 6.1% compared to forecasts of 5.8%. So it's kind of a mixed bag. I mean, it looks like some of the equity markets are doing fairly well. Looks like commodities are doing much better. And let's go ahead and look at the job numbers for this week. Initial jobless claims came in better than forecast at 498,000. Let's take a look at last week's numbers. They were revised up to 590 from 553. Take a look at continuing claims, 3.69 million, just above the forecast of 3.62. And last week's number was actually revised down from 366 to 3.653. So, not terrible. Let's look at the crude numbers, since I just mentioned that a couple of moments ago. Crude oil, or WTI, which is West Texas International, has closed the week at 64.81. And this chart goes back to, it looks like the mid-80s. So you can see, oil prices spiked in the aughts, 12, 13 years ago. And, had in recent years come back down to that, 40 to 70 level. And right now we're getting back up to the high range of where we've been the last, 5 to 10 years. So, yes, oil prices did plummet last year when things got when the picture looked so terrible. But they are climbing up again, and whether or not the price of oil is getting more expensive, I have my doubts there. But our dollars are losing value, and I don't think that is really a controversial statement at this point with I know I've covered the M1 money supply that is on the Federal Reserve's website. I've also this week had looked at the balance sheets of the major central banks. Those numbers continue to climb, so I'll probably cover that next week. That is certainly an interesting number to pay attention to. But like I said, things are getting more expensive. Also, looking at our balance of trade, our trade balance came in at a deficit of $74.4 billion. That is an all-time record. And this chart again goes back to the very early 80s, and you can see that our trade deficits had gotten its worst about just before the mortgage crisis back in the aughts. And it had been fairly stable, 40 to 50 billion, the last 10 years, and it has really spiked here over the last 12 months. So again, something to pay attention to. We are in a good position here in the United States that we're able to import a lot of goods that, due to shutdowns and closures, we haven't been able to make here domestically. But it does pose a problem when you're pushing a lot of U.S. dollars out into the international markets. We've talked about this before. Anytime there's an oversupply of something, it's going to lose value, and we certainly don't need the dollar losing value at this point. So, just looking right here on this chart, the dollar index is trading at 90.203, and that's again something to really pay attention to. I had mentioned in meetings, in the last year or so, to pay attention to the dollar index. It is a good sign of how healthy our economy is, and it has been dropping over the last year. Let's see if we can go out a little further, and going back the last, the dollar index was in the 70s and 80s when things got really choppy, over a decade ago. But it really strengthened in recent years, so it does give me some concern to see, if it drops below 90, we might have some tough headwinds ahead of us. So, anyways, that's all the financial stuff I wanted to cover this Friday. I did want to share with you a podcast that I listened to yesterday. It's from Pete Quinones, who his podcast is called Free Man Beyond the Wall, which is posted here on the Libertarian Institute. Their guest this week, or his guest on this most recent episode, was Bigtree. He's in the past been a producer for shows like The Doctors, and his something he's been doing a lot of research on the last year has been the COVID vaccines and their efficacy, and the potential harm that they may cause. And so anyways, I'm going to go ahead and share a couple of minutes of this with you. It's food for thought, just something to consider before going and trying a medicine that has not been approved yet by the FDA and has yet to make it through animal trials. And they're going to cover that right here. So let's give this a listen.
Sitting there watching it. When Trump started warp speeding the coronavirus vaccine, my nonprofit, obviously, we have an entire team of scientists around the world that have been looking at safety studies. So we were really curious about what would be the issues of a coronavirus vaccine. We didn't have any studies. They hadn't been in human beings. And so the only thing we could look at were the animal trials. And so here's what people need to know. Over the last 20 years, they've been attempting to make coronavirus vaccines. Ever since SARS was this really scary pandemic that was short-lived, didn't prove to be as bad as everyone had thought it would be. But all of these drug companies jumped in and said, hey, it'd be really great to have a vaccine ready to go the next time SARS sweeps through the planet. And so they all started making coronavirus vaccines. And so for 20 years, there's been these animal trials. And what's crazy is it doesn't matter the approach. It doesn't matter if it was an mRNA, if it was a standard old attenuated virus vaccine, or the adenovirus vector vaccines like Johnson & Johnson or AstraZeneca. Every time they had the same results in the animal studies. And here's what happened. They would inject the animals with the vaccine. It looked like it was safe because the animals seemed to be doing just fine. Then they would draw their blood and look at it under a microscope and found that they were creating, robust amounts of antibodies against what they thought was the coronavirus. And so it looked like the vaccine was going to work. Then the animal trials go one step further than human trials usually do. It's called a challenge study, where they actually inject the animal with the virus to see if the vaccine works. We're just now thinking of doing this in humans, but you can see the obvious ethical issues with that type of study. But this is something we do all the time, and we did in all these animal trials. Here's what happened. Where they expected the antibodies inside of the animals created by the vaccine to protect the animal from the virus, or in some ways neutralize it, grabs on and kills the virus dead, the opposite happened. For some reason, the antibodies in these trials would help the virus proliferate through the cells at an expedited manner, so that the immune system then panicked and went into what was called a cytokine storm, which is sort of a nuclear meltdown of your immune system. These studies describe a immunopathology, type 2 immunopathology in the lungs, meaning, lungs they can't breathe, organ failure, and in many cases, death of these animals. There was one cat study where every single cat died. Now remember, not from receiving the vaccine, but from coming in contact with the virus after receiving the vaccine. The vaccine acted as a catalyst to help the virus kill the animals. This was such a big problem and was so profound in all the studies that Dr. Peter Hotez, who was trying to make a vaccine like this, brought the alarm before our Congress early last year, saying we better not rush these human trials because we have this issue. He described it, called it immune enhancement. It's also been called antibody-dependent enhancement. It can be called pathogenic priming. And so there's a history of this. There was an RSV vaccine program with children back in the 1960s. They thought the vaccine was safe. Kids were doing fine after being vaccinated. But then when they came in contact with RSV, the same thing. They had this cytokine storm. They all got extremely sick, were on their deathbeds. 2 of the kids died, and we discontinued that vaccine program.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop that there. So I would recommend go ahead and listen to the entire podcast. I'll go ahead and attach a link to it here in the show notes. But just some food for thought. I'm not trying to certainly scare anyone. I just want everyone to be as educated as possible on potential side effects. I know me personally, I have zero plans of taking an experimental medicine until it's FDA approved and been through animal trials where I can see what the results are. So I guess we'll find out next winter for those who've already taken this experimental treatment and see what happens. But anyways, I'll go ahead and leave that there. And like I said, I hope everyone has a fantastic weekend. Take out your moms, your wives, and spoil them a little bit. And I'll be sure to be back here on Monday. It was hopefully good news of the week ahead, and we'll go from there. So everyone have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.